Letty, welcome back to the Diesel Podcast. It's I think this is the first time we chatted this summer. Maybe we did earlier in the summer, but um, I know you've been super busy, and there's been a lot going on with diesel and racing and tons of different things in the industry. So I look forward to catching up with you, chatting about what you've been up to and got going on at Dynamite Diesel.
I appreciate the welcome back. So thanks for that. And yeah, it's been very busy. Like actually, I've been taking some time off, like hung out with my daughter down in Lake Havasu. She's going to school. This will be her second year of dental school. Um, been doing like some boating, surfing, things like that as much as I can. You and I just discussed about the weather, and it's been a lot warmer than I really love.
Yeah,
So trying to spend as much time on the lake as possible. And actually, I've always been like a really big like advocate for like people staying healthy and what have you. Funny thing is like there's shit that happens to all of us, and you don't realize that it's happening until like potentially it's too late. So to touch on the subject, last October I started getting these like hives, and then after a few trips to the doctor, they were like, oh, it's probably scabies, oh, it's probably this, it's probably that, and they gave me creams and pills, creams and pills, creams and pills. And I'm like, damn, they were so itchy that like morning, noon, and night, I just wanted to peel my skin off. And they got worse, like from October till forever. They just never went away. Um, and finally, after going to the walk-in clinic, I don't know, four times, probably my doctor, and I finally was driving down the street and I'm like, hey, I got to swing in there because it was like this hormone therapy clinic. And now I'm gonna like conspiracy therapy or conspiracy theory like health, but I do believe like regular doctors are a little bit left wingish. They don't really want to believe certain things or whatever that I believe in. So I swing into the like hormone therapy clinic where people go get like Ozempic and testosterone and what have you. And I'm like, hey, what's it take to come here? I need to get a blood panel done. Can I get a full panel, like all my blood work done? Sure. Okay, cool. So $130 later, now I'm a member, and she pulls blood. It's $50. Calls me up and goes, "Holy smokes! Like your thyroid is in the toilet." And I don't mean like a little bit. I mean like, whoa, your thyroid's horrible. Light bulb came on, and I remembered when I was living in the camp trailer. There's this plastic thing that I had. When you're in a camp trailer, you got to be very organized, right? And all my daily vitamins and stuff, supplements were in that thing. Well, then when I moved into the house, it got put like a lot higher in the cupboard than I usually would grab. And I forgot to take all my thyroid stuff for like 3 years. So these hives, lo and behold, believe it or not, were actually related to my thyroid. And then I started taking the pills and it started clearing up, and I've been feeling immensely better. Like my joints would ache so bad, like going into the gym, I would bench the bar like 25, 30 times, and it just was excruciating in my joints. And all that stuff's now going away. And of course, like the weight's starting to fall off and the motivation's getting better. And like last night, Tina, um, who was, she loves huckleberries and she likes to pick huckleberries, and I don't care to bend over. So I just go there and watch. Last night, I grabbed kettlebells and I started walking up and down this hill where she was kind of like in the huckleberry bush and I was like, packing kettlebells, and the dogs were running around. It was a good night. So the night before, I ran around the block, which people that run would call what I did not running, but people that look like me would call it running. So it wasn't. It was like a. It wasn't clean. It wasn't a clean 3 miles. But I am feeling a lot better. I'll tell you that. My mental alertness is a lot better. Projects like on the vehicles and things like that, a lot better. Everything, we're taking on projects and doing super cool stuff for, I feel like in the company, Skylar, Eric, Brian, Mary, I feel like these people that kind of are leading like certain departments of the company are doing like really, 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 really amazing. And like Eric, for example, he's doing injector remanning. So numbers keep going up, warranties keep dropping, things are getting better. Skylar has the guys like in the calibration room, and those guys are, hashtag crushing it. And Skylar has been doing a lot of studying with, we got Chase Fleece, Chad Perkins, Patrick O'Brien. We do a lot of like studying with them using their dynos, and some of the smallest details that most people don't even talk about are making differences in efficiency of the motor now. So like what they're studying and what they're learning is pretty cool. Patrick O'Brien has a set of 3-inch injectors that he uses in like his regular 3.0 program. He just happened to throw a 3.6 at it, and it's on a Bosch ECU, and he just targets like AFR, so air fuel ratio. And what he discovered was as soon as he added more air, the ECU opened up the injectors a little bit longer, and it made like 2,200 and something, I think, on just bolting a 3.6 onto it. So it was, we know that the injector was not hanging on, like it wasn't, and he doesn't have the big stuff either. Like the big stuff that we do, the biggest stuff that we've made, nobody's really running yet. Like nobody's needed more, nobody's wanted more. Quality, competent tuners don't ask for the biggest stuff on the planet because they know that too big is too big. So, surely out of frustration, like I decided that we were going to build a triple turbo, fuel only, like super stock motor. So, Zach Hamilton and I have been buddies for a good long time. And I was like, hey, you got a block? He's like, yeah, I got a CGI block. I said, all right, well, I'm going to need that. And I'm going to need a roller cam. So, try and show off his stuff. I got a hold of Jeremy Wagler because he's got ductile iron cylinder heads that are going to be really durable. So Wagler's going to throw the head at it. I say throw it; it's not free, but it will be using his head. Chad Perkins, he's got the dyno that I used to own, and he's got a machine shop, so he's going to do all the machine work to put the thing together and then dyno it. And I got some stainless steel or some stainless diesel turbos, um, triple pumps. Like it's going to be 3K and change. And so I'm really excited about that project. And, at first there wasn't even really a home for that motor. Once it was done, I was going to be like, well, here's all the dyno. Here's the data. Here's how many US the injectors are on. I was just doing it to prove people that we could make 3,000 horsepower on fuel only. And now that we're walking around working, everybody's in good moods. Somebody said you should probably bring the C7 truck out and maybe go to UCC with it. I was like, well, hell, Chris Krebs, he just got licensed, and Chris wants to drive. So, all right, Chris, I guess you're taking the UCC truck to UCC. Mitch and Rex are out there working on the truck right now, cutting, grinding, fabbing. Like we've got plenty of time before UCC, but this truck is actually another ex-employee who now has his own body shop painted it for me. And so it's kind of like all in the family is doing this project, but it's pretty cool because we're putting it together, and we're going to go tractor pulling, sled pulling here like first. And then because I really want to take this thing to the UCC proven. I feel like in the past we would like wait, and then we'd go like a month or two before UCC would scramble, and then we're still pretty much turning nuts and bolts like as we're
Yeah.
loading in the trailer, and we never proved it. So I got lots of fourth places with Donovan, and I'm sick of fours, so we're going to try and do something different. Ryan Milliken is going to help us with calibrations tuning. We're going to use some ECU masters, I think, to integrate into a CM849 ECM. So Andrew Tabornik, Midgets Diesel, is doing a Turbo 400 with 1.25 inch shafts. We're doing a divorce transfer case from Profab. So we'll be able to choose and select our gearing in the transfer case instead of having to change like differential gear ratios. So it's a lot of money, but with the amount of power that dudes are making right now, like, I've got customers that I'm kind of proud of them because they're splitting blocks. And of course, they don't want people to know about that because they think that it's something against them. And I don't think it's something against them at all. I think that a Cummins block at 400 50 horsepower is going to live forever. But when you start standing on them, there's only so many life cycles that block's going to be able to hold together.
Yeah.
And, these dudes are getting to the point where they're actually splitting blocks just from making big power. And so that's why I figured we do the CGI block from Hamilton. It's beefy. It's got a lot of meat there. There's a bunch of column strength in that a Cummins stock block doesn't have. So I just don't want, you know, Turbo Tom passed away drag racing. I don't want that to happen to anybody else in this industry, but certainly not to one of my people, like absolutely not. So we're doing everything as safe as we can and building it as strong as we can so we can make sure that, safety is, paramount in the project. But when you're making 3,000 horsepower, holy smokes, like that's why we're not even attempting. And I know that there's a bunch of guys that make a bunch of really stout, like 47, 48s now, but 3K that's not that level. That's a whole new level. So Turbo 400 it is. There goes 35 grand.
Hey, Diesel fans, we wanted to let you know that our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a 20% off your entire cart discount code for you. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com, use code TDP2520, get you 20% off your entire order. They got a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different handle designs, different opening mechanisms. So if you're in the market for a new knife for EDC or hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house, they've got you covered with a bunch of different choices designed to meet any budget. We really appreciate them offering that discount code just for you guys. So if you're in the market, head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code TDP2520 and get 20% off your entire cart. That's a crazy project with all the different, the power, the companies you brought, on with you to help in their particular field of expertise. And then I think the time too, like you mentioned, having some seat time in it, some other things way ahead of time to iron out any details, which I'm sure there will be, to dial it in for next year.
Yeah, it's I've always kind of made fun of guys with triple turbos because they're using like 5,000 horsepower worth of air to make 3,000 horsepower. And then it's like a light switch. It's like turning on an LED and staring at it before it's on, and then going, God, my eyes hurt after like it's boom. We're doing 285s, then we're going to throw that into a 95. So we'll have like a genuine 3,200 horsepower worth of air. Ryan Milliken swears that it won't work, and we have $100 bet going on it. So that's been now publicly posted that Ryan and I have $100 bet. So, but I believe that we're going to make 3K, and I'm going to use the wastegates. So basically, instead of having 3,000 horsepower as soon as you stand on the gas pedal, we can wastegate some of the energy off. And then once, you're planted and you're rolling, you can control the drive pressure by closing the gates and then making more horsepower once the truck and the chassis is ready to eat it. So we're doing a lot of different stuff. Like I'm using 2 air-to-air intercoolers, both of which are rated for 1,400 horsepower. I hope that they live with like, say, 120, 130 pounds of boost. That's a big question mark. But I'm trying to keep this thing as light as possible. So my theory is, and it's not that I'm trying to be cheap, but I've got a PT 4000, I've got a PT 3000, and I've got a PT 2000. And the air to water intercoolers are really effective. But then you have a gusher pump, which uses electricity, and there's a big draw. And then you've got, a storage container where your water's at, and then you've got the water cycling through the intercooler. And if you're trying to make like a drag race setup, like to me, that just seems like a lot of wasted parts and a lot of wasted energy. Like sled pulling is going to be the longest that we do anything with, and it's going to be like 15 seconds. So I'm going to put the air to air intercoolers in a bathtub full of like water, basically. And I'm going to shove, it's Chris at CR2, Chris Roscup at CR2 is going to do all the plumbing and piping for me. And it's a lot because this bathtub is basically going to be in the bed of the truck because I don't want to in with the cab of the driver in case something ever blows up, 120 pounds. Can you imagine sitting next to an air compressor and having the thing explode on you at
No.
120? Like you wouldn't want to be there. So we're gonna plumb all the air underneath the cab into the bed of the truck, into this bathtub where the two intercoolers are gonna live. And at that point, it'll leave there nice and cool, head back to the motor, nice and cool. And like I say, we're going to regulate boost pressure based off of drive pressure using gates. So there's a whole lot of things that nobody's really done. Like right now, there's an AAM 11 and a half underneath the truck, and it's bolted in there with a 4-link and coilovers. So what we're going to do is we're going to end up using the Eaton 2145 that I had in my Ripper truck. We cut out of that chassis. It was rigid mounted. And we're going to use that to a 4-link and make it rigid mounted as well. So when we go pulling, we can throw whatever tire we want at it and not have to worry about busting the ring and pinion gear. So we're, like I say, we got plenty of time. We've got, enough, time and money at this point to really build something that should work pretty dang well. The motors that's going in it, so Skylar's deck plate motor is Dynomite Diesel's deck plate motor, and that's a solid filled motor that runs really rowdy. He's surrendering that because he's got that Nova now, and the Nova is going to end up getting like a billet DX500 Duramax thing. So I just got the quote for that motor this morning. That's going to be what goes in the Novas, a V8, billet Duramax. I'm pretty excited about that too. But that legitimately between like the CGI block and I've got two solid filled deck plate motors, that gives us 3 deck plates to get a bunch of practicing and tuning done. And we're never going to be like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. We got to get pistons. We have 3 motors. So I'm pretty jacked and jazzed about the way this thing's going and how much time. And reality is like between boating, walking the dog, trying to run a company, and camping. Like the first time I went camping was last weekend, and I drove 5,400 miles last week. I had to drive to Missouri. We sold a motor to Matt Ray from Siskiyou. So Matt and Kat, they're putting together a little drag truck this year, and they torched the motor. But I had a motor that was perfect for them, so we drove down to Missouri, grabbed it. When we made it back Thursday, we left Monday morning, and it was like 10 o'clock by the time we got out of town. And we were home Thursday night at like 7. So we drove like 4,000-ish miles right then. And then I came home, dumped the trailer, put the camper in the bed of the truck, woke up at the crack of dawn, drove back down to Rock Springs, Wyoming to watch Tina's son, Clayton, do like high school rodeo finals. And then when he was done riding, we just moseyed back through Jackson Hole and the Grand Tetons Park and all that stuff. And that's the first moment that we've had to camp all summer long. So, yeah, like it's been a lot. I'm not upset about it. It's been, it's all good, but the speed of life is more than I've anticipated this year so far.
Wanted to ask you about this build and the flow of ideas. You got me curious with how it works when you're trying these different strategies with the build. What is it like when, say, you have an idea, like you'd mentioned Ryan saying, "Oh, these 3 turbos aren't going to work," but you believe they're going to work. And also when somebody else says, "Hey, Lenny, you should do this on the truck," and you're like, "I don't think that's going to work." Like, how do you navigate that and then come to a decision with making a choice with different inputs from various sources that may have a expertise in their particular field?
I mean, most of the guys that I'm working with, like I've known for so long that we all have things that we know work and we all do things a certain way. There's certain things that, like I'm working with different people pretty much all the time on different projects, and I'm collecting little bits of data that work and don't work. And I can't because I'm working with this guy doesn't mean I can tell anybody else about that guy's idea. but at least I'm part of the project. I'm part of the process. So I'm not going to be able to tell somebody like Milliken, hey, look, I know for a fact that this works because, well, I don't, but I know that I've been around enough dynoing that it really should work. And I know that, if you give something 5,000 horsepower, well, Gale Banks would be a good example right now because like that dude's done a lot of winning, but he always shows up with just enough power to do that because he knows if you show up with too much, the more power you make, the more you risk breaking stuff, right? So 3,000 horsepower, like a legit, true, honest 3,000, nobody has ever applied that much power to a drag strip in a diesel four-wheel drive pickup truck yet. And nobody is going to put 3,000 horsepower to a non-super stock style chassis without four, bar pulling tires. And even the super stocks, like you look at, the Kent Crowder, like all of the Craig Dickey, the, Cummins Killer, like all that stuff, when they come out, they're not able to just like whack it and let it eat. They will sink. And if you're excavating downward while like sled pulling, you're not actually moving forward, right? So they have to use throttle modulation and throttle control because they have so much power, 3,000, 32, 3,400 horsepower, 29, 27, 26, that they can't just come out and kill it. So the guy that is really good about controlling his launch, and of course, pulling is all about like choosing the right line, making sure you don't bounce, making sure you hit a tight part of the track, not a loose part of the track. There's a ton to it. But 3,000, like there's guys that are going to be swinging for 4K now. Randy's going to be swinging 4K. I think Josh's going to swing 4K. Correction factors shouldn't be used on turbocharged motors because turbos make up for like, atmosphere. And then it really shouldn't be used if you're going to turbocharge and nitrous because now you've got cheater in a bottle plus boost. So depending on where you dyno and what the SAE sees for like air density, a 3,000 horsepower truck with, a 17% correction factor can be high in the threes. So depending on where you dyno, when you dyno, like UCC is it's all the same. When you take the UCC dyno, Cody and the guys, they're doing really, Cody and Elmer, they're doing a great job. But when they're at UCC and the air quality is good because it's nice and cool and the elevation in Indy is not very high, the correction factor is not going to be very much. But then if you take the same dyno and you go to like 5,000 feet and it's 90 degrees outside and the air density is garbage, then the correction factor starts to swing very, very strong. And you take both, like let's say you got a 3,000 horsepower truck at UCC and that's at like 1 or 2 or 3% correction factor. And then you take the exact same truck, don't change nothing, not even the fuel, and go to 5,000 feet at 90 degrees. Then all of a sudden on that day, that truck shows huge power. And that's something that, nobody really thinks about or looks at. And it's true that on any given day during the competition, as long as everybody's like, using the same yardstick on the same day and the weather doesn't swing too drastically from beginning of event to end of event, you're all pretty much going to get the same data. But when you look at some of these trucks, how they can swing from really, really high numbers to really, really normal numbers, that's pretty much why. Like we're using SAE correction factor, and I personally don't believe we should do that. If we're going to use boost and nitrous, like we're bringing our own atmosphere. So I don't really agree with it, but that's fine. We're just going to do UCC and we're going to put this truck together and go do dyno events and drag race it and sled pull with it. And all of my guys, I mean, it's a lot. How do you blend the ideas? I think that right now I'm going to try stuff that I've not tried. Like for example, if the intercoolers hate 120 pounds of boost and they blow up, we will possibly put a PT 3000 in the thing because it's, a lot thicker. It's got a lot more aluminum strapping on it. And I'm going to have to basically admit that I'm just going to have to use PT 3000. And then I got my gusher pump and I've got my water storage tank and I've got all these things that I'm trying to not use. Like I really trying to build something to where the serpentine belt on the front of the motor isn't in control of my destiny.
Yeah.
If that thing blows off and you're attached to your CP3 pumps and all the rest of it, then you lose everything. But if I can eliminate the need for an alternator, then I'm going to eliminate the need for an alternator. So, and these are short events. It's not like I'm running Formula One for 500 miles. These are seconds at a time and you're done. So, yeah, I mean, I just, 25 years, dude, 25 years of data collection and being parts of experiments that did or did not work. I guess that's the best way to answer your question. How do I blend all the ideas together? 25 years.
What got me thinking about it, and it kind of segues into, I know a lot of what we're going to chat about today is with details with injectors and the process for them, but you've talked with me before about how what you thought you knew in 2008 or 10 or 12 is different now, and through talking with other people, you kind of mentioned, I don't remember his name, but like a mentor that you had, or somebody that was on a different side of the fuel injection, who I think there were manuals that you have or information that he would share with you, and you would read through them and you'd bounce ideas off each other. How that's really pushed forward like the type of injectors that I would order for my 5.9 Cummins or my LB7 or whatever it might be. That relationship it's actually improved the quality of diesel fuel injectors. And so I was curious, like at that high level of 3,000 plus horsepower and this build and some of the strategies, how that evolved, because I think people are looking for this. And we're talking about trucks, we're talking about horsepower and torque, but it also applies to your business, your career, your job, different things that are going on. And I think that's what I love so much about automotive is, yeah, we're talking about hard parts and horsepower and torque and things like that, but a lot of the lessons apply to everyday life and endeavors and careers and businesses that are started. And I love to link both of them up. So no matter what perspective you're coming from listening to this podcast, you're able to pull a lesson from it, be it with racing, be it with sled pulling, UCC, your daily driver, or you have this great idea for a business that you want to start, and how do you take information from different people and incorporate it into something?
Wow. That was a lot. I don't know how to respond. Um, Life, everything that you just mentioned. I think that if you look at somebody who's at the worst physical condition of their life and they're getting by and they think they're doing okay, but then they spend, 30 to 45, maybe 60 minutes a day trying to not be the worst physical specimen of their life, all of a sudden things in their life become very, very much better. And they didn't even know. An example is like recently, like it's not that Dynamite's not making money and doing things because it's moving and shaking and it's growing and we're doing great. But the past couple of years, like the credit card balance, and I'm like, well, everybody, right? Like the inflation, and I'm not really going to complain about my life because I think I got it pretty good. But I also was not feeling well for a very long time, and I thought I would felt okay. I thought because I could still go mountain biking, I could still go snowmobiling, and I was still active and I was still doing stuff, and I thought I felt fine. But then when I started, the thyroid medication, and then YouTube, thank God. So like I discovered like Hashimoto's, and then I asked my doctor, I'm like, hey, look, I got these, the steroid clinic gave me like these pieces of paper, and it shows that my testosterone's here and this is there and this is there, and I'm thinking I got Hashimoto's. He's like, oh well, like give me a few weeks and let's do a blood draw, and then my blood work comes into him, and he's like, oh, you got Hashimoto's. I'm like, bro, like I already told you that. Like whatever. So I do believe that everybody's business, everybody's life, everybody's everything kind of revolves like based on their mental strength and their physical strength. If you're, I'm never going to be Hafthor or Bjornsson, and I'm never going to deadlift 1,000 pounds, but that dude, like he gains 40, 50 pounds and loses 40, 50 pounds based off of like events. And you look at him, the way he's running his life is basically a business, right? Like that dude gets on YouTube, makes money because so many people are watching, goes to events, he's making money. He's got a gym that's making money. Like people want to go there and work out. And they're not just average dudes that would rather work out at the Purple Palace. These are people that like, they're already like somebody and they just want to travel to go work out with a Viking that's 6'9" and 440 pounds. In your town, you got Brian Shaw, like one of the world's strongest men, probably, possibly the world's strongest dude that's ever lived. And he's one of the nicest guys on the planet. Like you can, but his lifestyle, like you look at his home and stuff, he's not making money doing curls. He's making money because he's a creative, smart guy that just stays physically sharp. And that's direct. Like that is his business. So that's why he's making money, right? But if you look at a dude that's kicking ass and running a business, he might not be making money off of anything physical, but he feels so bloody good that he's making money. He's creative. He's cooking up ideas. Like I've got projects out here that 12 months ago I wasn't even thinking about taking on, but these projects pay good money and they're fun to do. And they're also going to tie back into the company and give the company more exposure on things that, because nobody wants to look at an injector get built. Like it's there's nothing there. Um, but they want to see tires get thrashed.
Yeah.
So, like I can show people like what the inside of an injector looks like and whatnot. It just doesn't draw anybody's attention. Um, if I can draw people's attention by putting my injectors in an engine, dynoing the engine, then going out and killing tires, like I think people are going to be a lot more excited to watch that. So that's kind of my theory and my stance on why we need to be in the game of like building trucks, period. Um, does it all tie together? I would say absolutely, because mentally your clarity is better when you're physically good. Last night running up and down the hill carrying kettlebells, like kettlebells are not that fun. But then when you add the element of a mountain road with sharp rocks and things like that, like my ankles and my like calves and like the front of my shin, those muscles hurt this morning. Like they were just tight, they were sore. And I thought, well, that's weird. Like I've never really felt that before, but it was like going up the hill and then turning around back down the hill. But in relationship to like the company, there's stuff at my company that we're doing today that we didn't do 10, 12 years ago. Circling back to the injection stuff, like rate trace, Skylar has a rate trace stand that he runs, and basically right now, anything at Dynamite that even a stock recipe, before we lock the recipe in, Skylar has to run it on the rate trace stand because measuring millimeters cubed or cc's delivered is a portion, and that's what a tuner is going to talk about, like how many cubed they want to make X amount of power, and they calibrate using cubed. But what the tuner doesn't know is what the rate trace looks like. And if you picture like everybody on your podcast has looked at a dynograph, right? And if you could make a dynograph very, very sharp, like 90 degrees on off, that's the perfect rate trace. You turn the injector on and it makes maximum needle lift, maximum pressure. And then when you shut it off, it boom drops to zero instantly. And injectors don't work like that. But when you take the idea and the concept of rate trace from a common rail and you transfer it to a mechanically injected vehicle, all of a sudden putting like a full cut delivery valve in there, everybody loves full cuts because they smoke and they got tons of fuel. But what's happening is the rate trace is very, very slow. So it comes on and it doesn't really shut off. And because the piston goes up and the piston goes down, you're losing compression as the piston is going away. So you're not squeezing that fuel to burn the fuel. So can you make a bunch of power with that low pressure diesel? Yes. If you spray it with a bunch of nitrous oxide, it will burn it. So but is it safe? No, because as the piston goes up, the piston goes down. If the injector never shuts off, you're going to start to hydraulic the motor. And if you hydraulic the motor, you're going to split the motor. So there's a lot of things about rate trace that go into common rail that we didn't know 3 years ago. And now looking back at like all the mechanical projects that we've had going, the faster you can smack the injector line, the better off you're going to be. And then people will use like ginormous fuel injection lines and they're delaying the rate trace. But if you've got a plunger, if you've got a 14 or a 17 millimeter plunger, you're going to smack that injector line with so much violence. And if you don't have an injector nozzle big enough, you're going to split the line or possibly just like legitimately pull the injector body out of the nozzle nut. And I've seen that before as well. So yeah, like it's now having Skylar having one rate trace stand, and then my buddy Pat helped me get set up with basically a portable rate trace that we were able to like move from one stand to the other at the shop. But it's also a lot of work, and everybody's busy, so we haven't even done that yet. So recently, I just bought two more rate trace stands, and one of those is going to go to our Cummins QSK process because Cummins QSK is extremely valuable. Like with the current administration being like drill baby drill, fracking is getting turned on. So I've got a customer named Preston, and he maintains energy companies. So fracking pumps are a big deal to them. So he's been pushing on me to get this project done. So I'm like, all right, fine. I actually, yeah. So we got two more rate trace stands coming, and one of them is going to be just for the QSK slash ISX and possibly some cat stuff. But QSK is that's my goal this year, is to be able to run and calibrate perfectly using rate trace QSKs. And I feel like if we don't have rate trace, measuring CCs delivered is a great thing. It's accurate to a point, but it's not 100%. When you look at a rate trace, everything that's inside that like dyno graph is basically just fuel quantity. So you don't necessarily have to see the number, but if you see the rate trace, you know how many mm cubed it's pumping. So it's just it's a more thorough, it's a hypersensitive, hyper intense way to look at fuel quantity on off. Skylar, we know for a fact that the guys that were running our 5.9 injectors at 220, 230 MPa, the return goes way, way, way up. So the CP3 pumps have to struggle a lot. Like they'll go to like wide open throttle. And once the FCAs go to wide open, the 12 millimeter pumps or whatever they're using start to consume a whole lot of horsepower off the front of the motor just to rotate them around, right? So then we put a 6.7 injector in there that we put our seal and stuff in, and it holds the pressure a heck of a lot better, and the return drops by like 80%. And the FCAs only have to go to like 30%. And even though the injector is pumping the same amount of fuel in the same amount of time, or possibly even less time, the motor parasitically would gain 20, 30, 40 horsepower just going from a 5.9 injector to a 6.7 injector, because the two, 12s or 14 mil pumps or whatever the customer is using, FCAs just aren't going up. Like they just don't have to work. So there's less parasitic drag on the motor, and it's going to put more to the tire.
Hey, diesel fans, I wanted to chat with you about diesel fuel. It's something we've talked about a lot on the podcast, and specifically ways that it can lead to a lot of costly repairs. And the main reason that we have these issues is a lack of lubricity. Our friends over at Hot Shot Secrets have developed a formula that boosts performance and then addresses this issue. So whether you have an old truck, new one, something anywhere in between, we all face this issue. Hot Shots EDT is a 6-in-1 formula. It cleans injectors, boosts cetane, and it has 4 times the lubricity as their leading competitor. So it's a great way to be able to stay ahead of the maintenance curve, avoid those costly repairs, and the best part is it does the work for you. So all you do is add it to your regular fuel up schedule, and it's doing all the heavy lifting. So you don't have to worry about some of those issues that just come with diesel fuel anytime we buy it from the pump. If you go to hotshotsecret.com, use code DIESELPOD20. It'll get you 20% off your order. We really appreciate the team and our friends over at Hot Shot Secret offering this discount code just for you guys. So if you're in the market, head on over to their website, use code DIESELPOD20 and get 20% off your order. For the daily driver and rate trace and what you described about ramping up and then decelerating when it's commanded to, and smoke and efficiency, is that really where the advancement and the, I'd say, precision of injectors for daily drivers, trucks that tow, things like that, have really taken a huge step forward in, I guess, in being able to deliver cleaner power more efficiently, to get better fuel economy, to have a more efficient system because of how you're taking the data, how you're able to get the data actually, interpret it, and then build the injector to meet that goal?
On the emission side of things, I think that pressure helps a lot. Pressure helps because like you can get quantity. Every horsepower requires a certain amount of energy to create that horsepower, right? And if the piston's going up, it's gaining compression. If the piston's going down, it's losing compression. So if you picture like a connecting rod and the rod swings like this far, the farther that rod has to swing, the shorter the actual time at TDC is. So when you look at like a deck plate motor with a 1 inch longer connecting rod hanging off a 6/7 crank, the dwell time at top dead center is a little bit longer. And because of that, like I've been part of experiments where like the deck plate motors do make a little bit more power, and but it's based off the fact that the pistons at TDC a little longer, and at TDC that's your peak compression. Now you can mess that up by giving it way too much advance, and you'll make just a pile of cylinder pressure that you do not need nor do you want. And what happens there is like as the piston's coming up, you're starting to inject fluid, and as the fluid starts to ignite, you're creating a bunch of cylinder pressure there before the piston gets to TDC, and that's really hard on head gaskets and engine parts, things like that. So the pressure thing helps because now you can get the same quantity in there at a higher pressure requiring less duration. So yeah, like all the later style trucks, the Ford Power Strokes, everything that's using more and more and more pressure is becoming more emissions friendly because you're squeezing that fuel in a shorter duration of time, therefore creating a more effective and efficient engine and outputting less. When you see the black smoke, it's unburnt fuel, right? Like that's anybody with any common sense that has a pulse should understand that. So if you can put the required amount of diesel quantity in the engine at the correct time and burn it at peak compression, then you're not really going to waste very much, like hardly any at all. So like with the OEMs, they've got really tough jobs because I don't even think that the people with job titles that give authority to make engines supposedly, green, clean. I don't really know if everybody knows everything they should really know about before they get that job. But knowing engines and knowing what, the output waste looks like and how that can be affected by pressure and timing. And to me, yeah, like data collection of, you throw an edge monitor in any brand new pickup, and what comes out the OBD2 port is pretty insane now. Like you can look at damn near everything and see things that you could not see 20 years ago because nobody even terms like the verbiage wasn't even being spoke about. And now you just buy an edge, monitor, plug it in, and you can see things that 10 years ago weren't even talked about. Yeah, injector line pressure is a big deal. We recently just got rail pressure limit valves that actually the first one is in my pickup right now. And the pressure limit valve that we had built is 270 bar rated, and the pressure sensors are going to read up to 300. So the aftermarket tuning guys, they're able to turn up pressure to the point where like you basically have to put a plug in there, and the plug's not really the safest way to go either. So we had the foresight to think, let's just get these things made. So we made them, and they're like I say, I've got the first one in my 2019 right now, and I'll probably, if it doesn't do anything stupid here in the first week, then I'll probably put one in my 24 next. But I would way rather drive that stuff because my 24, although is stock, When I tow my camper, there's 5,500 pounds in the bed. And I tow the boat, there's 8,000 pounds. So that thing uses, every bit of all of its horsepower all the time to do everything. And the last thing I want to do is get myself on the road and then discover that the pressure limit valve bursts really early and now I've got no power at all. And I'm really, I'll probably crash the truck. Like I'd hate that. So yeah, yeah. Like that's the problem, dude. There's so many things happening at the company right now. You take a guy like Warren Buffett that says like, I make money because I say no to everything. And I try to, but when I think there's 30 of us now. And now that there's that many people, I'm saying no to a lot of things, but you got marketing people, you got calibration people, you got the EDM people, you got the AFM people, there's somebody doing something there. And I'm very, very lightly in almost every one of those projects. So I barely have enough time to really figure out like who I am or where I am. It's kind of crazy. Even though I'm not imperative in any of those projects, really. Like these guys could build this truck without me, but they also haven't collected data for 25 years and dreamt of and if these guys come up with an idea on that truck that outshines mine, we're using their idea. Like this is not Lenny's ego truck. This is if anybody comes up with an idea, we're going to use it and we're going to try it and we're going to see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then, we'll try something else. But I'm trying to put together the best. We don't sell aftermarket ECUs. So I'm using 849 just so I can show customers like you too can do all these amazing things even if you don't have a $20,000 ECU. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot going on. A lot.
It's really cool. What got me thinking about that was, I think it was earlier this year, we did a podcast about, I think it was like injectors for the VP44 trucks and 12 valves. And you were telling me about how popular they are as a seller. And I think around that time, there were a bunch of Dynomite customers that were like sending you guys videos of like their cold starts. So it was like in the winter, they were talking about different stuff. And it just connected a huge dot for me with traditionally how I thought of a 12 valve or a VP44 truck. They're kind of smoky, they had these inherent things with them because of the technology and the way those fuel systems worked, and just how it's done a 180 because of the machines, the technology, the knowledge, the things you've learned, and being able to retroactively apply that to these older platforms got me thinking about those guys who daily drive, who might have an older truck or just, they want to get into 2025 and the technology that's available and what you're able to do with the fuel injectors.
With the VP44 guys, like that piston, 153-degree spray angle, it's a very durable piston. Nobody hates it. Everybody likes it. When you move that angle to 155, it starts to break out and over the top, and it doesn't work very good. And if you go any narrower, then it really doesn't work good either. So 153 is kind of the sweet spot there. But when you take them from factory, there were 7 holes. And then later on, like we thought we were learning something because, back circa 2005, everybody starts using like 8-hole nozzles. You had the edge jammer nozzle and things like that were coming out. And I think BD had the same nozzles, and they were like, well, 8 smaller holes is going to atomize better than 7 bigger holes, in theory. But then 8 smaller holes evacuates the fluid less quick than 7 bigger holes. So even though the atomization theory was there, the concept of like how long is it going to take to dump what's in the line wasn't there. So, we did 8 holes for a while. I never really loved them. Like everybody in the marketplace thought that they were the shit. And then when we got our own EDM, I'm like, well, we tried 8, we tried 7. How about if we try like 6? 6 worked really, really, really good. How if we try 5? And 5 didn't work that good at all. So I think every single piston bowl out there has its like sweet spot. 6 is really effective. It's very efficient. It's probably, if I had to pick one, if my EDM could only like do one number of holes, I would say that 6 works really amazing on most motors, kind of good in some motors, and yeah, like 4, every time I've ever tried 4 spray holes, it doesn't work very good. Um, and I believe that, like when you're looking at your bowl in 360 degrees, you really want to use all of the oxygen in the bowl. But if you put 4 big spray orifices there, they're too big. And if you get 5, that's actually really good, like on the 12 valve style stuff. Like you put 4 in there and it doesn't work that great. You can make power, but they're dirty. And if you put 6 in there, they run okay. But a P7100 doesn't have the same injection pressure as a VP44. So, and then the quantity of a P7100 is greater than a VP44. Um, they really like the 5 holes. And then, like we put the pilot holes in there. So at low needle lift, at low pressure at idle, you're atomizing off of like a couple of 5 thousandths holes instead of 5 at 12 or 13 or 14 thousandths. Yeah, like all of the things that we're learning, customers, walk in. Yesterday, I was standing there and a fellow walks in with a 6.7 liter power stroke. All he works on is 6.7 liter power strokes. And I'm like, good for you, because he is so smart with them. He understands just that very, very well. It's not that he hasn't been a mechanic on everything else. It's just there's enough 6.7s out there that keeps him busy. And he has created his own little niche that's working very well for him because he's really good at them now. He had us build him a very small set of injectors, and we AFM'd the throttle plates. And because the AFM, like once you understand the recipe, once you get a perfect recipe, you can make the throttle plate balance way better than the factory stuff did. So we gave him a bit more quantity, not tons. We did like no nozzle work whatsoever. We just gave it more throttle plate, which basically smacks the nozzle in the face even harder, quicker. And when you look at, he had another brands of injectors there as well. They were like 45% overs. And when you look at our quantity wasn't like too terrible much lower, but we did it on a stock nozzle. And if you look at like our quantity compared to the other stuff, at wide open throttle, we were basically within like 2 cc's, 3 cc's, very like ultra tight balanced. And the other stuff, not so much. Like it was definitely not, it wasn't way far out of the ballpark, but it wasn't near as tight as what we were doing. And he's kind of the first guy that we've tried that exact recipe on, and he knows that. So he's going to throw him in. He lives in Montana, and he's driving with trailer down to Texas. So he's already collected data on the stuff that's in the truck, and he's coming home, or he's going to go back down there and then come back up. So within weeks we'll know how those things actually turned out, like when the rubber hits the road. But there again, it's tools. Like you got to make tools. We buy an extrude hone machine, but that doesn't come with all the accessories to do all the projects for every piece that's underneath some hood out there somewhere, right? So yeah, man, it's been, man, I tell you, it's a wild ride. Like when I walk in, I talk to Skylar for 20 or 30 minutes, thinking about like the stuff that he has been monkeying around with. We've got some of the guys on the dynos, they'll get the same set of injectors, UPS charges per set. You got 120, $130 each way, and they're able to dyno it and collect data with their ECUs, and then they red label them back to us, and then we modify them in the smallest, slightest little tweak, and then red label them back. And pretty soon they're like, "Yep, this is good." Like I bet we've got sets of injectors that probably have been UPS'd 8, 10, 12 times, but you, as an engine builder and then as a consumer, like you don't come into Dynomite going, "Hey man, so I want the exact same injectors as that guy over there selling." Go buy them from him. Like that dude spent a lot of money on Red Label, and him and I, worked very hard on that recipe, but that is his recipe. Go get them from him. Like he deserves to make a little bit of money on that. Don't, you're not getting his recipe. Now, if you want my 400% over, I'll sell you that. But if you want the same recipe that that company is using, you have to get that from them. Just it's plain and simple.
I love the details like this. Like, I guess to bring it or circle it back is like, if you're really interested in a topic, which I assume if people are listening to a diesel podcast for like an hour, they're passionate about their particular truck or racing or whatever it might be. And like for me, when I'm really interested in something and I go onto YouTube, if I see a discussion under 20 minutes, I don't even watch it because,
Really?
because I know I'm not going to get, well, I'd say 99% of the time, no, because I'm going to see tons of videos that are all under 20 minutes. So I'm going to get the same information kind of, I guess, boiled down to kind of the same thing. So I look for that content that's longer, that's more detailed, because I do want to know the details of how you EDM something. I do want to know about rate shape. I do want to know what kind of materials being used. I do want to know how they're tested because I'm not going to get that information anywhere else. So I'd love to go into these discussions with you and ask you these questions because I'd walk away from this and go, I learned a lot more in, listening for that hour than
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find. So I think it's really important for diesel truck owners, enthusiasts, shop owners that are out there, racers who are listening, or like, I want to make a change, is to be able to hear this incredibly detailed stuff. It actually reminded me when you said people don't want to see a video on EDM, they want to see tires burning.
Yep,
Like maybe I'm different, but I want to see the opposite because I can see millions of videos of tires burning, but I'm
that's
not going to know
true.
how you make what you do and why it's different.
Yeah, no, that's true. And EDMing, it's funny because like the frequency, so the tungsten, it's kind of it's almost it's real flexible. Like you grab it and it just wiggles around, right? So when you come up to the nozzle, like if that pen is my nozzle, the closer I can get the EDM head there, the more accurate that hole is going to stay because when it starts to feed the wire through there, let's say your wall thickness is 37 thousandths. Well, if your wire guide is back here 10 thousandths, you've got 10 thousandths worth of wire that starts to whip before it even touches the surface of the nozzle. So the outside surface will look very like OEM quality, like shitty, because that wire, like when they're setting up those wire guides, not every single nozzle is exactly the same diameter and they all have a little bit of tilt to them, kind of a thing. So when they're doing those things thousands per day, they've got to make sure that their guide doesn't smack the nozzle, so they leave them back a little bit. And we're we're pushing ours to where like they damn near touch, and then when it rotates around a little bit, rotates around, it moves just a little, thousandths of an inch. So we have to give enough clearance that we don't collide, but we want to make sure that we're there. And then as you start to burn into the nozzle, you can change the frequency in which the generator hits the tungsten, and you can create the wire to start to whip more or less, creating like a conical style hole or not. So that's when you get like a dude that drills a hole, he can't give that hole any taper. And he'll never be able to test why we would possibly do that. But OEMs do that. I wonder why. Like it's strange that somebody with that kind of budget would do something that nobody's physically ever going to see. But motors become very, very happy. Like everybody's bought something that seemingly runs so perfect, and then you tear it apart like brand new, and then really get into the minutia of the finest details, and then you put it back together, and you're like, try that. And people are like, semi truck owners are like primary examples when they buy a brand new semi truck, the bigger the engine, it seems like the lower the effort is into making sure that that engine is going to run really, really, really amazing. Because you put like an owner operator in a truck with 20,000 miles and then take the injectors, put the injectors back in it after we calibrate them. He's like, what? This thing's as smooth as my Duramax that I drive home after I get out of the 15-liter truck. Well, it should be. Like, why wouldn't it be? Well, because like in that realm of life, those guys aren't expected. that they do not expect those motors to run that good or that nice. And since they're that big and they only spend 1,600 RPM, they don't need everything to be exactly balanced. But then when that same dude calls up 2 months later and goes, I'm not sure why, but my DEF bill dropped by like 15% over 2 months. Oh, okay, cool. And I'm not sure why, but I picked up like 5 to 6 tenths miles per gallon in diesel. Well, because the motor's in there, it's just happy and it's not fighting itself. The BTU that smacks the EGR cooler and the DPF and the SCR, if that BTU is very much like the same load all the time, then all of those things, if you got one injector that's hitting it really hard and it's loading it up, then you're going to go into like more regeneration cycles. And the more frequently you regen, the more frequently you're going to have to replace parts. So you really want to make sure that like injectors, and this goes back to rate trace. If the injector is spitting out so many mm cubed and that's within spec, that's great. But if it's like 200 microseconds late to the party, then the piston doesn't know that. So the piston goes up, the piston goes down, and you finally shove your fluid in there 200, 300 microseconds later than you're supposed to. You don't know, but the timing of that injector is very far retarded. And ECMs can't really tell that. Like they can if they're really screwed up, and ECM will pick it up, but a motor won't. Like a motor's just going to keep doing its thing, and you're going to be constantly like having to service the all the emissions gear, like especially EGR coolers, stuff like that. So I guess we have picked up a lot of information based off of just troubleshooting people's problems.
Yeah.
Like way back, we used to do a lot of injector testing for Dodge, and they would have a customer that screwed up a DPF, and I'm like, yeah, send me injectors. And we would just go into them, clean them up, balance them up, send them back. And then 2 months later, that truck come back yet? Nope. All right, cool. I had a truck come to my shop one time, and the service advisor took the input as far as like what was wrong with the truck. We pulled the injectors out, tested the injectors, and said, no, these things run fine. And it started and ran, did all of its things. And then the same set of injectors came back from another job shop. Same set of injectors came back from like a couple of Dodge dealerships. And I finally was like, hold on, why does this set of injectors, why does it keep coming back? Like the customer's probably not crazy. So then I had to schedule with the Dodge dealership to meet their customer, who at one point was my customer. And I went there and I was like, all right, stop. Like, I really want to know the details of this thing. What's it do? When's it do it? How comes it do it? And then I was able to look at the injectors very, very differently to troubleshoot their exact problem. And that was 2007, 2008, probably. So I can't remember what it was, but I remember like hearing all the data and all the complaint. I was able to go, okay, now I'll take the injectors and I'm going to look at them differently and we're going to figure it out. And we did. Devil's in the details, baby.
That's really cool. I love today's conversation. It was really enlightening to go down some of these rabbit holes with fuel injectors. And then that build you guys are doing is really cool. I'm going to have to follow along with that and get you back on to talk with you as that progresses, maybe some feedback. Do you guys do some pulls and dynos and some other things? I think that's going to be a great truck to follow along with. And as always, Lenny, it's great to catch up with you. Look forward to seeing more of what you guys do, and appreciate your time today.
No, I appreciate you, and I'll send you some pictures. I'll shoot you a text and let you see where the truck's at right now with progress and what have you. And yeah, appreciate you.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code TDP2520 to get 20% off your entire cart. If you're in the market for a new knife for hunting, fishing, EDC, something around the job site, around the house, they got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, handle design, different opening mechanisms, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget that you might have. We really appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel Podcast listeners. So again, if you're in the market, head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code TDP2520 and get 20% off your order. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters, Tyler Lowen at 23 Diesel, Robert, Cutter Up Rob, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube and podcast apps. Follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 9 of the Diesel Podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you want to hear in 2025. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.